So, before we start,
Yes.
I know you.
Yes.
You're Lizzie.
I am.
This is Maria. Can you introduce us?
I forgot your last name today, by the way. I was like, it's Maria and Dustin. Maria and Dustin. That's all.
First and last.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what their names are. Crap. So sorry about that.
Can you introduce us to Terrence and tell us a little about him?
So this is Terrence. I picked him up at Walmart because he was... Oh, in September.
This is like the first week, right?
Yeah, in September, because plants make everything better, and our co-working space was looking sad. And so I picked up Terrence, and he's growing like crazy. He has these cute little new things that, because he's a fern, they unfurl. Very adorable. That's all.
I thought the name was a joke for a while.
Because you left, and you wrote on the whiteboard, "Someone please feed Terrence."
Well, yeah, he was going to starve. I was gone for a week. It's okay. Aaron got my back. He fed Terrence. It's totally fine. But yeah, plants make everything better, and naming them makes you take care of them better because you feel attached to them rather than letting them die.
And you
Life
know
hack.
I must really like you because office plants.
Why do you hate office plants so
not for
much?
me.
They cleanse the air and add everything great to the world.
Okay.
That's not hyperbole.
So that's Terrence.
Lizzie,
Right.
you just came to us from the Excel Center.
Yes.
What were you doing there?
I was doing short interviews and surveys with students to get a better handle on the way sort of low to middle income individuals shop in South Bend specifically, and those who might have a hard time saving. And so since the Excel Center is for people who hadn't managed to graduate from high school the first time, are now going through to do it a second time to either get job skills or to move on to college, I thought they'd be the perfect target group. So I wanted to see how they shop. Asked them, everyone uses cash. Everybody uses cash, so that's going to be difficult if you want to do an app that's around that. Almost all of them did, however, have store loyalty cards, which was very promising because if I want to make it digital, then I'm going to have to do something. I think right now that cash plus a store loyalty card could work. But it is really interesting that none of them have credit cards. Like not a single person I talked to that wasn't over the age of 50 and fairly wealthy had a credit card at all. So that was a bit surprising.
Back up 3 steps.
3 steps.
So what's the insight you're working off of right now for your venture?
I thought it was a little bit silly that there are so many coupons and discounts and savings and rewards and loyalty programs out there to try and help people save money ostensibly, but not one of them focuses on long-term financial health. Most of these apps try to make you spend more, which is not actually good for most people, especially if it's non-essential items like clothing or sports gear or, if it's, food or whatever, that's different. But so to be able to tap into that system that clearly people love, the loyalty, the rewards, but to flip it around so that while spending, they save more than they would usually and that it goes into a sort of longer term financial liquid savings plan for them.
So this savings kind of concept and like being able to leverage the way people are already saving, but actually the joke here is save your savings.
Yes.
I think what you found is like people get really excited when they get coupons back and cash back and then they go immediately spend it.
Yes.
So it's not really helping them save. But this is relatively new. Like we're end of January now, beginning of February.
Yeah.
You've probably been working on this for a month, maybe
Yeah.
a month and a half.
Yeah, about 3 weeks really.
Yeah, so how did you get there? Talk us what the first part was like.
Yeah, so originally I had been sort of trying to solve the problem that the Federal Reserve found through a study back in 2015 that found that over 50% of Americans couldn't come up with $400 if they had an emergency. And that was a staggering number both for anyone who's read it and for me. And so originally I'd said, okay, if you have an emergency and you need to come up with $400, how will you get it? And through that started focusing on the payday lending space and tried to come up with a solution that would make lending easier, cheaper, better, less predatory. Through that, I've discovered that is a tough space, but I started interviewing people around short-term credit needs and small cash expenses in general and found that one of the ways that people manage this is through coupons if they can, sort of got to the crazy coupon lady thing, but also through these rewards and loyalty and that they love these programs and they love the gamification or there's what's a long game? Yeah, long game's great. But that there's sort of this passion and excitement around savings and discount and coupons, but that a lot of people don't actually use them because it's so complicated or time consuming, or it's 50 cents here. Like one of the guys that I spoke to today was like, yeah, I will use a coupon if it's for like $10 off, but I'm not going to bother with the 50-cent ones or the dollar ones just because it's such a small amount of money. But so, with this app that I might be building, if I could loop those and make it easier, then 50 cents on 5 products over the course of a month is closer to real money.
Yeah. Let's talk about the struggle of the payday lending part.
Oh gosh.
Because I think we all went back and forth on this for 3 months. And what I appreciated the most out of that, I think, was how passionate you were about this is a problem that needs to be solved, and I'm gonna find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that we recruit for, is that I don't care if the rest of the system is telling me it can't be done, I'm gonna figure it out. But at the same time, I think we learned a lot from each other on how do you know when to I don't want to say give up, but when to rotate and find another path. It doesn't seem to be an easy answer.
No. And yeah, it was really frustrating because the thing that drove me the most crazy was sort of it was 2 different catch-22s that were layered on top of each other. And one was that the people that desperately needed affordable finance options for these very short-term loans didn't have access to any of them because of their past, because of the way the system is. So the more you needed affordable cash, the less access you had to it. And that was really frustrating. But then from the sort of payday lending model, it was the catch-22 in there that it's just really expensive to provide short-term credit. For small amounts of money, banks can't really do it. Friends and family try, but if your network doesn't have the money. And so the fact that the actual solution itself is too expensive to fund. And so trying to find a way around that, I became very passionate because those contradictions are so frustrating that it's that frustration that I was trying to solve. And so, maybe hung on too long.
Well, I think that nuance is interesting too,
Yeah.
because everybody understands the kind of predatory payday lending from the consumer side, but you really quickly got to kind of the business model side of payday lending.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time chewing on how can you tweak that business model to make it make sense. And I think that's one of the sticking points that you kind of came to, and recognizing from the systems level what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's something that's carried over even into this new solution, where that if you want to build a company that is going to help people with their financial health, then you have to make sure that the business makes money by helping them and not the reverse. Because with payday lending,
this is music to my ears. You can say that.
Because with payday lending, the only way that they can make money is to sort of almost force people into taking more and more loans because small loans are expensive. So if you can get people to drag out the loan or to take multiple loans, then you can actually start to make money on them, but that's bad for them. And same thing with these rewards programs right now, where people are sort of incentivized to spend a ton of money in order to get benefits, which is great because then they get free things, but it's basically through buying things they wouldn't have anyways. But so if you can tweak any of those business models so that you make money by helping people save, that's when you're going to come up with a solution that's actually going to solve their problem and not going to end up sort of just being a fun app rather than a helpful and an influential app.
Yeah, I think that was cool when you started talking about the savings thing, you said something around what if this couponing was actually for financial health? What if a rewards or a savings app was really about financial health and not just about the active?
Yeah, the sort of gamification of it all.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that came out of that brainstorming session we did with the AmeriCorps volunteers. That was over and over we heard that. Love my Kohl's card, but really wary of credit cards.
Yeah.
What if I could get rewarded for savings? Or what if I could...
And that was actually a sort of surprise, because I hadn't intended to talk about rewards or awards or anything like that. We'd originally been talking about credit cards as a way to sort of bridge that gap. And it was okay, well, what do you do if you have a $400 expense? If you have a credit card, could you put it on that? And people were just laying into credit cards and how much they hated them and were really passionate about how awful the system was and had a friend or a mother or an aunt who had been, destroyed by credit card debt. And so I'd sort of assumed that everyone hated credit cards. And then someone brought up the Kohl's card. And they were like, I love my Kohl's card. I was like, guys, this is a credit card. You can't love and hate credit cards at the same time. But apparently you can if they have rewards. And so that sort of passion is you can flip that so people are making decisions that are better for themselves rather than worse. Yeah. That's the key.
So moving backwards in time, because I think this is so
even
funny
more
to
backwards.
Tell this backwards.
Tell the journey.
So many interesting stories before we even got here.
Including
that we're definitely going to touch on.
Drag that down.
But so first, let's say second week, because we have a whole other set of stories about first week.
Oh man.
But second week, as you started to dig around in our problem research, what attracted you to the problem? Small dollar credit was where you landed, I think, pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah, it was so universal, and it seemed, not that small dollar credit is a small problem, but it seemed like the ability to solve a problem that was for $100 or $400 was a lot easier and could, it could just make a little bit of difference rather than I'm not looking to find a way to help you buy a car or get rid of your $20,000 credit card debt. That's a lot of money and a lot of time, but it's if someone just needs $100, if they just need $500, it seemed like a problem that should have been solved already. Yeah. And so focusing on that, I started on that. And it was just, it was kind of strange that there were so many little ways that we're already trying and they weren't successful. Mm-hmm. There are people that are operating in the space. Payday lenders are essentially the most recent solution to that problem. Yeah. So that clearly is not working that well. But yeah, I was jumping into that at the very beginning just because it is so universal. Yeah. And they found that, the not being able to come up with $400 is true of a household that makes $15,000 a year and is also true of a household that makes $100,000 a year, right, depending on how they manage their money. So
one of the things that I remember from the first week, I got Maria really excited, or I guess it would be second week that got Maria really excited about was you quickly fell in love with Kumu.
I love Kumu.
Which is the platform.
Music to my
ears.
The platform that we use to manage all of our problem research.
Yes, visual mapping.
Not everybody was as thrilled. Everybody was thrilled about the information. Not everybody was thrilled at how overwhelming it looked.
It was great. Yeah, well, so much information.
Talk us through what that was like.
No, I had been sort of creating these systems and network maps in my head, and layering them, whether that's in different sheets or sometimes I'd even do it in PowerPoint, just because that's the tool they had available to me, like Excel to PowerPoint. But Kumu's so great because it's almost like making those maps searchable in a way that wasn't before. So you can add all of the tags or the information, or you can group them under 4 or 5 different qualities. And so you can, let's say you're focusing on a problem like small dollar credit. Yeah. So you have the small dollar credit problem in the middle, and then you have all of the actors who are, whether that's a bank or a payday lender or friends and family or even a credit card for that small amount. So then you list all of those, and then you can have stories, individual stories, and then those stories can be linked by location, or it can be, and then for instance, if you want to say these are the people that are trying to be social, and these are the people that are 100% commercial, you can add tags and then search those tags, and then everything will just come up. It's really great.
So as someone who's had experience in social ventures and early social ventures before, what was that, where it was, because it was relatively wide open at the beginning. Yeah. What was that like for you?
It was great to start off with the idea that the end goal was to create an efficient social venture. Because
use the word efficient.
Because the sort of spectrum from predatory corporation to nonprofit, it's a spectrum, and it's not exactly linear. But so a lot of the times you'll find that social ventures will either be nonprofits that figured out how to make a little bit of money, but it's sort of an aside, it's not the core business, or it's corporations who can, give a little bit back or try and make something a little bit less awful. Fair trade was around that. But that none of them focus on sort of solving the problem in a smart way. And that, you know, there are probably things that you need nonprofits for that you just can't create a business to solve. But there are a lot where if you just try and come up with a more creative solution or flip how you're thinking about it, or perhaps even connect two people that or two partners or two businesses that you haven't connected before, that you can come up with a solution that solves things in a sustainable way because it makes enough money to sort of keep going. But that money that you're making is not against the person you're making it from. It's with them, helping them for them.
Yeah.
So it was great to start off like that because everything else I'd worked in sort of almost fell into being a social venture. The first company I was working for in Ghana, the Shea Butter Company, I was essentially hired to rebrand them as a social venture. It had just been a company that had started in Ghana working with women who picked shea nuts to help them do it better, to help them earn more. And then as he sort of got big enough to move out of Ghana and to start thinking about international, he heard of this thing called a social enterprise. And he's like, so what is this? And I was like, oh, it's a company that makes money by, you know, like helping people essentially, that they have both financial and social profit, as you will. And he was like, oh, that sounds like what I do. I was like, this is exactly what you're doing. So yeah, but then to come in and sort of, you know, establish the rigorous business side for the social was my job there. And then the second one was the weather forecasting company where they could also in Ghana. That was, the last 2 years in Ghana. They had the weather algorithm, the better weather algorithm that they had discovered for tropical weather. And the truth was that they could have used that for anyone. They could have sold it to the Air Force. They could have sold it to shipping. They could have sold it to anybody. And they chose to sell it to farmers to help with agriculture and to sort of try and have a social impact that way. But the business wasn't like, they weren't making the most money they could. And that was a business choice to sort of make less money, but to have social impact, which is great, but it's not like a pure social enterprise, if you want to call it that. One where the more money you make, the better impact you're having.
So you heard about us while you were in Ghana?
Yes. International reach.
Through our social enterprise Google group underground.
Yes.
The same way John found us.
Well, technically, it came
you.
from somebody that was watching that because I wasn't watching that at the time.
Tell me more. I don't know.
So I had been sort of looking to start my own venture, to break off and do something new for a while. And I'd just been talking with my friends. And so one of them that was posting on that board for their company saw the doanTI ad and was like, hey, Liz, like you mentioned you were doing something around this. Do you want to check it out? And so then I got the email that way. But yeah.
What was your first impression?
I didn't think it was real. I just wasn't sure. I think I got there like a little bit early and the website wasn't quite created yet, or there was like only one landing page.
Coming soon.
Yeah, basically. And it was like, I'm not even sure there's like, so there was like the coming soon, and then there was the part where you could enter all of your information, but not like where I could get more information on like what this was. But so yeah, I came back, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later when I had been thinking about it for a while, and more information, a better website was up. And I was like, okay, well, it's being updated at least. Like that's a thing. But yeah, so through that.
What attracted you to it when it was more than just coming soon?
More than just coming soon.
And doanTI coming soon. Factory somewhere.
Yeah, that was the most startup. I was like, this could literally be any startup right now. Any startup.
My brother was devastated when he found out that was not a picture of our office.
Oh, man. No. No one actually uses real pictures on their websites anymore. But so what I liked was essentially the language around what you guys were describing, which was, you know, focusing on a problem because, you know, being in the startup social enterprise space, I had a lot of people, especially, not that being a serial entrepreneur is bad, but like friends who were serial entrepreneurs who would just create things because they could, and they didn't actually do anything, whether that was in, you know, California or Ghana. And it was like, why don't you focus on a problem? Or you had companies that were, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 years old who in the middle of operating discovered really what problem they were solving, and it wasn't the one they thought they were. And so not that those years were wasted, but that there had to be a more efficient way to figure out what problem you were really solving. And so having someone sort of state that right up front, like, we think that by really understanding a problem, you can come up with a more efficient solution. I was like, yes, I've been feeling this frustration the whole time. So it was that language and that sort of thought process that led me to toANTI, or made me more interested.
Yeah. So going from interested, I agree with them philosophically.
Yeah.
To like, I'm in Ghana, they're in South Bend. They're starting like relatively soon. Like there wasn't a lot of leadway.
No, it's like 2-3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty mobile, so that was never a problem. It was honestly that I said, why not? I do want to start my own venture. These people are willing to help me rather than just trying it on my own, which is great, but having a support system in place. But so then I applied, and you guys gave me a call, and it was after that first conversation with you where I was like, yes, these people know what they're doing. This is real. Like, I really actually want to consider this now.
Yeah,
being able to talk through it.
How did we pull that off?
I don't know. I really enjoyed our first conversation with you because I felt like when we talked to you, it was like for me, my thought process was like, I know people like Lizzie from living in Haiti, and like this is the kind of person that I think if we can get in here, like we won't have to explain what we're trying to do. Like she gets it because she's lived it.
Yeah, it definitely felt like more of like a conversation than it did like an interview in any way. So that was really great. But then what I also liked was that I knew a lot of people who'd run accelerators and a lot of people who had started cohorts or tried to even just create networks or databases for entrepreneurs to use. And they weren't sort of approaching it from the right way. Like, I think the 2 companies I worked for went through a few accelerators and they just weren't that useful. But so having you guys highlight, like we're still in the learning process, but we have a network and these are the type of connections we want to find you. And we've got a process and these are the sort of like the rigor that we're going to put you through to help you, all of that I could identify as being like, yes, this might actually be helpful, having been through a few accelerators in the past for different companies.
I think rigor is an interesting question here.
It's probably not the right word.
I think you and I had some pretty good battles of stubbornness.
Yes.
About rigor and
yes,
what
I
we were
know.
looking for, which I appreciated though, actually.
But
talk to me about that. So like some of the stage gates we had, I felt like we held you to.
Yeah, that was frustrating, but necessary probably.
Yeah.
It's that maybe it's me, maybe it's a lot of people tend to get really excited when they get to a breakthrough or think of an idea. And so it's really easy to be like, yes, this is the solution, like let's run with it. But having a process and having a framework and being like, okay, that's great, but have you thought about, the entire stakeholder map and how this will affect A, B, and C? Because if I'm sitting there and I've come up with a solution for a customer and I'm like sure that it's going to work wonderfully for the customer and that they really want it, that's great. They're not the only person involved in this business. And so perhaps in the past I would have just like taken that and gone running with it, but having to sort of be like, no, take a step back, look at everyone involved, sort of answer these questions was really helpful.
Which I think is the cool thing now, because I think now your instinct on this kind of second pivot or on the savings, like your whole system now is based on the fact that you're trying to put some stakeholders together that don't necessarily mix up.
Yeah.
So now it's like your whole mindset is like going there first.
Yeah, I mean, it's like created a framework in your head. Like you don't even think about some of the questions to ask until someone else brings them up. But then once you have them, it's like, oh yeah, you're right. What is the like target market versus the real market for this? And is there a potential to combine them? Or, hey, people have always gone to banks for this in the past, but there are all of these new tech apps that might work just as well. But just so knowing about that, knowing the right questions to ask was key.
So you had probably the most interesting first week of all of our group, because I think it was the Thursday of that week that you got there?
Thursday. That was late.
But tell us why you were late.
Oh, man. Okay, it's because...
It's not because you're a late person.
I am not late. I am never late, and it was very frustrating to be late. No, it was because I had an interesting incident in Ghana that sort of delayed everything. Walking home one night, or walking, I guess, from point A to point B one night, I ended up getting attacked by a crazy person who had a mental disorder of some kind, who really wanted my cell phone. And when I wouldn't give it to him, he bit me. And broke skin. And so I ended up having to go to the hospital that night and get like all of these shots. And then because I was delayed for like medical reasons on that, the sort of final week of the company that I was working for, everything got delayed around that. So then I had to push my flight back. And then when I did push my flight back, I ended up getting really, really terrible food poisoning at the airport in Ghana. And so they had to set up like a whole galley for me, like a whole cot in the galley for me on the airplane. and I got to be wheelchaired through JFK because I couldn't stand up. Because
on your way to Invanti.
On my way to Invanti. So yeah, that was me trying to get back. I ended up terrible food poisoning after. Yeah, it actually worried me a little bit that I was like, okay, please tell me this is food poisoning and not some like weird thing that I got from this person biting me. But yeah, so then it was great because I got back to Utah. When you're too sick to eat or drink anything, it makes road trips very easy. So then I got back to Utah, picked up a car, drove 2 days straight, and then literally pulled up at the office and just got out.
During one of our meetings.
Yes, during one of the meetings. And I was like, hi, guys.
And then you were here, and
Yeah.
then Lizzie was here.
Yeah.
We were complete.
That was crazy. I did not think the office was real. That was my next first doubt. I was like, you guys have given me this address. My next real doubt. I was like, okay, now I'm signed up. I'm going to South Bend. Everything's great. And so then I drive up to the old office on Michigan. And it says 702 Michigan, but if you search for it, it actually shows up on the other cross street, Bronson. And there's no door there. It's literally like where the pin is underneath the railroad tracks. Like there's a pin in just like an alley someplace. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't Michigan. But so then you drive to the front of the building and there are like no signs and it looks completely abandoned. And like I think the lights were off inside because it was the middle of the day, so you didn't really need it. And I was just like, I don't even know if the door is going to be open. No one was answering their phones because you guys were in a meeting. And I was like, I'm just going to walk in and hope for the best. Like I'm pretty sure this is 702 like spray painted on the side of the building. So yeah, but you guys were inside. You were real people.
And then you go home.
Yes.
And you had arranged to be living with John and Jada.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Right. We found a wonderful deal on a house on the internet where the rent was as most deals are, in this sort of up and coming neighborhood, really close to the office. But the house is work in progress.
Has charm.
It has charm. It is actually this adorable old sort of Victorian house, but it wasn't lived in for at least 2 years prior to when we were getting there. And it did say that it had been like listed on Trulia or whatever it was that we looked at. It had been listed on Trulia for several months and no one had moved in. So yeah, we get there and it's holes in the walls and like half the lights don't work yet, which slowly got repaired over time. And now we have put plastic over everything, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think that was when, like, because a lot of people asked us, like, are you guys going to provide housing? And we're like, well, don't really know how to handle that yet.
Cots in the office.
And then you guys got into that house. And I was like, all right, these guys have a little bit of risk tolerance.
Yes.
And then just, like, over the next week, it was like, they're, like, figuring it out. And, like, it was, like, I think through some of that stuff rather than the actual work. I was like, I think I would trust these people to start a company.
Yeah.
They're being really resourceful.
Yes, very resourceful. How to actually live in a house that is not up to living standards. Although I really felt bad because of the three of us, like I had just come straight from Ghana and John, our other roommate, had just come straight from India. And then the third one had come from New York City. So as far as living standards go, I was like, Ghana and India are like an abandoned house is one thing. Like, of course, I didn't have electricity at all in my old house for the most part. And like, didn't really have any way to cook food. So this house was like, yeah, sure, of course. I can just squat here. This is fine. But
so walking in the door, like, I mean, not literally, but like walking in the door, walking into Invanti, what were your expectations for the 6 months? Both like what you thought it was going to be like and like where you thought you were going to get.
So I was actually actively trying not to have expectations because...
You're the second person who's told us in a nice way that you didn't have any expectations.
Well, so for me, it's like, in a nice way, it's that I was the first non-scientist at the weather forecasting company. Like I'd essentially built the sort of product side of that company with them and turning like, the first company with the shea butter, it was already a running business and like even just trying to implement some of the social stuff, I knew that 6 months was a very short time frame. And that even if you were to come in with some like a fully formed idea, like 6 months to get it up and running is just, it's insane. Which is good because having that pressure to be like, there is a deadline, let's do that was great. But so I came in thinking like, this is going to be a really interesting exercise, especially from someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, to have the sort of support in place to be like, can you come up with like almost proof of concept for you guys? Yeah. Like, can you come up with a really insightful business idea in 6 months? And I was just excited to see if I could. It's like, can you do it? But yeah, so I had those on the side where I was just like, 6 months seems really fast. Don't know what I'm gonna be able to do. If I even come up with like an executive summary of a business model in 6 months, like I'll be pretty excited about that. But then from the second side, like I said, I had been through so many accelerators with different things and helping manage them, like when they came to Ghana, and so I was trying to not think of it like an accelerator, just because or at least, I don't know, just prep myself for it, hopefully not to be like that.
So this is a point of confusion sometimes when we're explaining what we do, is that we're not an accelerator.
Yes.
So in your own words, how would you describe the difference between us and an accelerator?
It's like you guys are a pre-accelerator. It's like a half think tank, half, I don't know, like design thinking with a purpose. Yeah, probably don't use that as your slogan. Think tank, design, purpose, game thing. Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know. That's really hard. But
so 5 months out of your 6 months have passed. Do you think, like, where do you feel in terms of your expectations of, like, if I can get to an executive summary, I'd be happy? How much progress do you feel you've made?
I have made a ton, and it was a little frustrating just from someone who's like I like to run with things more than approach them systematically. I am surprised with how much progress I've made since 3 weeks ago when I came up with a new idea. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I was working through it for this lending model that didn't really work. But to start with that and now sort of have been through that process once, it's, if you are ever going to do raise money for a round, the very first time you do it, you have to learn everything the first time. And so the very first time I went through sort of the problem solving and the stakeholder mapping and really trying to get at real answers to some of the trickier questions, that was really hard. But so now that I've done it a second time with the new idea, those questions are coming easier. And so I feel like, hey, I might actually be able to start 3 or 4 companies faster now that I have figured out a really good process for doing it. But it's really exciting to see it sort of reach. And I think I'm going to actually be able to reach the stage where it, someone else would understand what I'm doing, if that makes sense. Before this, it's I'm just sort of coming up with an idea. Do I call it a research project? And so by the end of the 6 months, I think I'm actually going to be this is my company. This is my idea. And talk to people about it in a way that I haven't been able to in the last 6 months. It's this is a business and that you can run this and that this is what it's going to do. So, and I think I'm going to get there.
Yeah, I do too. That's exciting to hear because that was always a hypothesis of ours that, because I think we just kept telling you keep working on this lending one. If it doesn't work out, it's okay because there's still a lot of time. Yeah. And you kept saying, which now hearing you say this thing about the 6 months, you're like, nope.
There's not a lot of time. There is no time.
But I think our whole hypothesis was, but when you do it again, you're going to be it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
It's exciting to hear you say that feels true. And even if the savings doesn't, I'm convinced you're going to go.
Yeah, then I can find something else. Yeah. It's funny that focusing on the problem both makes it easier and harder to do that. Because it's okay, the problem is people don't have $400 when they really need it. That's honestly the problem that I want to solve. Yeah. There are 900 different ways to solve it. And so sort of really understanding the problem, knowing which consumers or customers or whatever you're really trying to target, understanding why they can't come up with that $400, what they're doing in their lives means that now let's say the savings and coupons and rewards one just fails. I still have that base of knowledge to be okay, all right, how can I tackle this? These are the stakeholders that are involved in the very base of the problem. Who can I now look at from this angle to solve the same problem in a different way, which is interesting.
So one of the things that we're really excited about kind of taking out and sharing is the whole thing that we don't think being an entrepreneur equals having an idea. Yeah. And it sounds like you felt like that back when you were in Ghana, right? It's I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm just waiting.
Waiting for an idea.
Talk me through that identity because I feel a lot of people still have the assumption that if you're an entrepreneur, it means you have a great idea already.
Yeah, it's really hard to get around, actually, in that, like, the whole time, yeah, it's even like, so back when I was working with the other companies, I was like, I want to start my own thing. I want to be an entrepreneur. And I was literally waiting for an idea to like come to me. I don't know how or when I thought that was going to happen, but I was like, yeah, like I'll have just this like aha moment and I'm going to have a brilliant idea for a company and then I'll start it. And well, one, just through living this and through talking to other entrepreneurs in the space, that is just not true. Because one, your aha moment is probably like a tenth of a good idea, first of all. And then when you do actually get in this space, you realize how many things you were wrong about. But so it's learning, like it's sort of been a two-part learning. One, that you can come up with those ideas yourself through really understanding something has been just, you have to live it to learn it, honestly. Otherwise you can't. It's really hard to do it the other way. But then to understand that everyone else who started a company, almost none of them started as aha moments. And so that the whole thing is a fallacy, really, that's how a company started, that someone discovers one good idea and turns it in. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. Yeah. But it's a hard lesson.
Something else we haven't touched on yet. So you identify this opportunity with rewards and coupons and savings. You also personally are, I think we can safely say, obsessed with finding deals.
I just like discounts, okay?
I don't think a day goes by when you don't yell out like what the deal for a flight to Aruba tomorrow is.
It's actually Prague today, and you can get there from Chicago for $350.
Yep. And I'm saying, like, I wasn't going to know we were successful when you stopped, like, enticing me to fly random places with you.
Well, no, now you just have to come with me. It's fine.
And that money is going to go into a savings account.
Yes. All of the money I've saved you on that flight. Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
But talk us through kind of the intersection of how that kind of part of your life, which you probably didn't anticipate coming to play in your venture, has kind of intersected with what you're working on.
Yeah. I did not expect my Groupon problem to in any way influence my company that I was starting. But no, it was... I've always been, I guess, a bit of a cheapskate. That's like not a very nice way to say it.
Thrifty.
But thrifty, that's great. I've always been a bit thrifty. Like free is great. Close to free is better. And there are so many discounts that already exist in the system. And it's, frustrating from a personal standpoint. My sister, who makes a lot of money, just like, if she just spent like 5 seconds, she could save 10% on something and just doesn't do it. But then the same thing exists for people that actually need to save money. And so it was, I hadn't, when we were talking about the focus group, how we hadn't gone in there thinking about rewards and awards and all that stuff. It was really thinking about the small dollar credit. When they brought it up, that was the first time when I was like, hey, I actually know a bit about this space. Like, I actually know that. It's funny that you bring it up. And so it felt almost natural in a way that I didn't even think about it until like 2 weeks later when I was like, oh, you've been doing this your whole life. But so it did sort of just I fell into that, and I think I pursued it because it was something that I knew and understood better than perhaps payday lending, which I have not been involved in.
What has it been like talking to people? Because I think you've covered the spectrum of, you've had a lot of individual conversations, but you probably more than anyone else have also had these really interesting group conversations. Some of the AmeriCorps volunteers now over at the Excel Center. Like, what has that experience been like? Especially when you didn't have something to bring into them.
It is difficult. And I think what is it's a bonus in that it happens this way is that you start a conversation and it doesn't always go the way that you want, but in the end you end up identifying something that person is passionate about, and that's when they really get excited, and it might not be what you thought it was. And so, at the beginning, especially when I was talking to people like both payday lenders and people who had taken payday loans, like no one was excited about that ever. Like, pulling teeth to try and get people to talk to you about anything. Or sometimes the only way that would be good is if someone had used payday loans and sort of like gotten over it or like gotten out of that trap, and so they got a little bit excited about it. But once we started talking to the AmeriCorps group, it was just so much energy in the room, and so it's been really interesting discovering that through your conversations with people, what you end up talking about is often the most important thing, even if it's not what you intended to learn, because it's what the people that you're trying to work with or help or whatever are passionate about. And so I tried to talk about small dollar credit, and people were like, I love rewards. I'm like, that's not really what we were talking about. That is not what I asked. They're like, yeah, but I get these free things when I spend all of this money. Again, that's not really what I was asking. But in the end, because so many people are passionate about it, being able to like discover that through small conversations and through groups. Like when you talk to a group and everyone sort of feeds off each other, it's crazy. But
so what do you see going forward? Obviously, we're trying to figure out what this savings
Yes.
thing is in the next month.
yeah.
But like more broadly than that, post Invanti, like is Lizzie still passionate about becoming an entrepreneur, whether it's this
Yes.
idea or another, or what do you feel like leaving here?
My next steps are definitely to either, like ideally, like I said, we've come up with like a functioning business model, and then to test that somehow. And what that, like, so it's not even a question of like, will I continue to do this or will I test this? It's how, where, at what capacity, at what scale. And that is going to be decided in the next 3 weeks. So, if I come up with something that's very specific to South Bend and I can figure out how to prototype it here, then that's where I go. But with an app that's a bit more broad, it might be possible that someone else is interested in it. So,
Tell us a little bit more about your experience in South Bend.
Oh, South Bend. It's cold. It's very cold here. Coming here from Ghana was rough.
I remember you told us you didn't have any closed-toed shoes.
No, I only own
It was
sandals.
okay for the first couple months when we
And
didn't
like
have
progressively getting colder. It's not like we brought you in. It's like it's cold now, but it gets better.
No, it just
got here in
keeps getting
September,
worse.
and
And I've been informed it's not going to get better. It's just going to keep getting worse. And there's all of the snow. But
until April,
so I had to buy boots. That was no more flip-flops. That was really sad. But no, South Bend is crazy. I was actually talking to someone like 2 months in where I was like, I don't really go out that much. Like I have hung out with the people in Invanti, and I've met a few people through them, but I just have not been that social. I haven't done anything. And I still can't walk into the 2 main coffee shops without seeing somebody that I know. And I was like, I don't even know anybody. And I still can't do it without running into somebody that I know. It's crazy. It's just so...
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Both. Both. But no, it's that, like, another thing I was laughing about is that everyone's so supportive here. Like, everyone just wants to help get South Bend off the ground and help any solution that they think might play a part in that. And it's just, it makes me worry that it's, like, it'll work in South Bend just because everyone's trying to make it work, which is a really great way to prototype something. But the network here is very supportive, which is crazy.
What questions do you have for Marie and I?
What are you guys going to do for the space in between, like, when we stop and when other people start? Like, what role will you do? What do you do? Can you explain to me what Invanti is again? Well, you can come to Prague with me if you'd like.
I'm in.
Actually, we're actually going to Orlando first because the tickets were $29 round trip.
Lizzie.
I bought them. It was $30 round trip to Orlando. Like, I'm sorry. It's worth it. Those were purchased this morning. It's only for like 5 days. So I will definitely be in Chicago in a month because I'm flying out to go to Orlando.
No, the thing I do next is back to our shared love of Kumu.
Yes, more
I get
Kumu
to go
mapping.
back into problem hunting mode around small business support stuff.
Got it.
Putting that back on.
Kumu's fun.
So I guess we haven't announced this officially to you guys. I think we've talked about it. It's like, so we're doing another cohort.
Mm-hmm.
There are some changes that we'll be talking about between that one and this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, like, I think, and hearing you talk today, like, we've found, like, there is a way to do it, whether we have it
nailed down
yet, which we don't. But there is a way to do this, I think, is what we have the inkling of. And so we're just going to
run with it.
We're just going to keep going.
What are you guys going to do when I have to call you after February and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, help? Will you answer the phone?
Yes.
Always.
Okay. I'll probably be in
we're
here.
We're not going to change the locks on March 1st. Like, oh, Lizzie, sorry, you were cohort 1?
Cohort 1.
Like, they meet
cohort
down
1.
the street.
Got it. You're going to send us back to Michigan?
No, it's something that I mean, you guys, I think will always be cohort 1.
Okay, got it.
So we'll ride it out with you guys for as long as you guys need us. And we've always said the cool thing about Invanti and like launching this and testing it and seeing if it can work is like we have 5 backup plans now.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Invanti doesn't work.
There's this really cool business that I've heard about. It's called not Save Your Savings, but something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing, back to your early point about our business model being aligned with our customers, Lizzie, we in Vanti are only successful if you're successful.
Yeah,
so our self-interest has us wanting to help you be successful.
And
even
I can
if
save
March
you money
1st.
by helping you coupon.
Yeah, you can
So-
run our budget
Yeah, I can help you guys coupon, and if I do it well, I'll have a few $100s just set aside for you.
Exactly.
So
actually, one quick question that I do have, because you do have international experience, is like we get a little bit excited sometimes, maybe too much so, about this, like the same model being able to be applied in other places in the U.S., but also internationally. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, having lived in Ghana.
I think that the model and the process would translate incredibly well to other areas, like whether that's London or whether that's Tamale in the north of Ghana. I think what's going to, like, my gut feeling on that is what would be really interesting is that the type of entrepreneurs that you see are going to be wildly different and attract. I'm just imagine running this in Ghana, and you would get some incredible people. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, and what we've always liked about that too is the world of social enterprise. There's a whole other discussion about like who are the entrepreneurs, right? Especially when you're talking about a different country, a different context, and the ability to use this model in the same way that we're thinking about it, like in South Bend, and saying like, how do we enable like entrepreneurs in Ghana or potential entrepreneurs in Haiti or name the country to have a shot to find those problems to solve and put a lot of support around them.
Now you've got my brain working on this. I'm like, is it the same types of resources? Like, is it
that's
like,
another good question.
is it like network, a tiny bit of funding, a place to like work, a process to work through? Like, is that the same or do they change? I don't know.
When we go,
I want to find out.
International expansion. Who are?
I suspect that it would be the same.
I think roughly, yeah.
Yeah, like the same sort of bullet points. How exactly those, like how you would build a network in Ghana might be different than how you would build a network in South Bend, but I'm pretty sure it's the same.
I still love how you say it, South Bend.
I say it wrong, I know.
It took me 3 years to start saying
Indiana. I'm just going to say Indiana from now on. South.
No, I like it. It's got like an upswing to it.
So how am I supposed to say it?
South Bend.
South Bend.
What do you say?
Down.
South Bend.
Damn it.
I love it. It's like so positive.
Oh, no. Okay.
South Bend.
Yeah, I'm just going to say Indiana from now on. I think that's the best way to handle that. I think it's going to be the same. Like, based on the other startups that I worked in other countries, like, we would have benefited from the same sort of process.
Keep thinking about that.
I am thinking about that now.
We'll come back to you on that one.
All right. If you need a network in Ghana, I can get it for you.
I'm just sending you to Ghana.
Done. Run the This is after I've made
Ghana,
my first startup really successful.
Right.
Yes.
It's running on its own.
Absolutely.
You can hire John to run it.
I hope so.
Cool.
Thanks, Lizzie.
That's it, yeah.
That's it. Thanks, Terrence.
Thanks, Terrence.